Welcome to Policy and Governance Perspectives, the official podcast of the Schar School of Policy and Government at George Mason University. Join Dr. David Ramadan and Schar School experts as they engage in thought-provoking conversations with elected officials, policymakers, and thought leaders. Listen for in-depth discussions on policies, politics, governance, and career pathways, all designed to elevate your perspectives and expand your mind.
Welcome to another episode of Policy and Governance Perspectives, the official podcast of the Schar School of Policy and Government at George Mason University. Today, we're diving into energy, who produces it, who uses it, who regulates it, and what Virginia energy future looks like in a rapidly shifting landscape. My guest is my dear friend and former Virginia House of Delegates colleague, the Honorable Glenn Davis, now Director of the Virginia Department of Energy and longtime public servant. He is leading the implementation of Virginia's All-American, All-of-the-Above energy plan. Joining me as co-host is also a dear friend, Dr. Michael Webb, Vice President of REG LLC. Michael is both a scholar and a practitioner in the energy sector with over 25 years of experience spanning regulatory, academic, and corporate arenas. He also serves as an adjunct professor here at George Mason, where he teaches economics, energy policy, and regulation. Together, we'll unpack how energy moves from the ground to the grid in Virginia, the major challenges ahead, and the practical opportunities we can pursue no matter which party controls Richmond. Gentlemen, welcome.
David, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. All right, let's jump right in. Director, explain to us, please. Give us an Energy 101. Help us start with the basics. For the average Virginian, where does our energy come from? Who generates it? Who regulates it? And how does it actually get to homes and business?
And David, that's a long and loaded question. But so let's start kind of in Virginia Energy in the Commonwealth oversees everything from mining for coal, thermal coal and met coal in Southwest Virginia, where one of our offices is, to the critical minerals, my geologist out of Charlottesville, and then the the State Energy Office in Richmond, which oversees technologies, solar, wind, nuclear, etc. And all that comes together to create, all those different areas come together to create power for Virginia. So, whether it's the coal mines in Southwest Virginia, that more in the, decades in past, would create, mine for thermal coal. And the coal was such a large producer of power today, or power back then for the Commonwealth of Virginia, and we exported a lot of it as well. Now, 55% of all of our power is by natural gas. A little over 30% is by nuclear. It's single digits when you start talking renewables, solar and wind, but all that is generated, and it's generated by a number of entities. First, obviously, our utilities. Virginia has two large investor-owned utilities. We call them IOUs in Virginia, Dominion Power. And out in the southwest part of Virginia, you have APCO, also the parent company is AEP. We also have a number of cooperatives. Cooperatives are entities that are member-owned, and there are a number of those in the Commonwealth as well that provide power for their members and residents in those areas. The majority of power is produced by the IOUs, whether it be through there's only 2 coal plants left in Virginia right now, but through the nuclear facilities, 4 of them. 2 of them are in Surrey. 2 of them are in North Anna, and then obviously natural gas around the Commonwealth. What a lot of people don't realize is Virginia imports 35% of all of its power today. A large chunk of that actually comes from West Virginia. And when you look at West Virginia, Dominion actually has coal plants in West Virginia that provide power to Virginia, which will be interesting in the later conversation I'm sure we're going to have. And the last thing I'll mention, David, when it comes to, my life was a lot easier when I thought Virginia existed in a vacuum when you and I were in the House of Delegates, before I knew this term PJM. PJM is a regional transmission operator, 13 states, and the District of Columbia, pretty much a small portion of North Carolina, and then 13 states going north. and their job is to balance all the electrons on the grid to keep the lights on. But to that extent, Virginia does not control its own destiny. We're part of a much larger grid, and decisions made by other states impacts the reliability and affordability in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
So just a quick follow-up, if I understood it correctly. We are literally using all the above today. We have nuclear power generation, we have gas generation, we have natural gas, we have still some coal in Southwest Virginia, we have some renewables, but they're minimum. Yet, even though we got all of that production in Virginia, we're still 35% short.
Yes, and growing. I mean, to put it in perspective, David, we can talk about expectations and where they were in 2020 and where they've grown to today, but we expect to have to double our energy supply in the Commonwealth of Virginia over the next 10 years. Essentially, we use about 25 gigawatts today, and we need to be closer to 50 gigawatts by the end of this decade, or this coming, next 10 years.
And that's because that's what the demand is in the market. Is that mostly commercial, or is that both commercial and residential?
So it's a mix. It is mostly commercial, but, back in 2020, Dave, when you and I were in the House of Delegates, and for a long time prior, we had more people leaving Virginia than coming to Virginia. Right. Massive exports, right? Now we're having more people coming to Virginia than leaving Virginia. So we are seeing greater growth on the residential side, but residential is a small piece of the equation. Where residence has a bigger impact is when people start electrifying, right? So when people start having electric cars and they're charging at their homes and more what we call Internet of Things, right? The number of devices in a home that run on electricity today is an enormous multiple of what they were back 20 years ago, right? But when we look at the majority of this demand, it's because the onshoring of advanced manufacturing again, and a lot of that's coming to Virginia. You've seen the investment of over $140 billion of new investment over the last 3 years or so in the Commonwealth. Data centers. We knew data centers were growing in Virginia, but AI uses a lot more power than a traditional data center. And there's simple things, David, that we don't think of using a lot of power, like indoor agriculture. That uses actually a lot of power as well. So all that coming together is increasing the demand significantly. And
we may see, even though it's not the topic today, but we may see more need for the marijuana growing as well coming in.
I would imagine it's going to be a conversation next year, yes.
Michael, I'll turn it to you.
I actually had a conversation a few months ago with somebody growing legal marijuana and the electricity implications. So, Glenn, we've kind of touched on this, but how has this energy mix evolved over the last 20 years? Coal, nuclear, renewables, natural gas, and how do we compare to other states in terms of generation usage and costs?
We are more expensive than the states south of us. When you start looking at South Carolina, North Carolina. Now, when you look at the standard cost of electrons, power, people can have that conversation of, are we more or less expensive? But then you throw on the riders on top of it and the racks. And when you look at an all-in number, that's where we start having some of the competitiveness situations. We still are less expensive than the deregulated states of the Northeast. So we're still doing well there. But there are some challenges when it comes to competing against states like North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, the states that we're known to compete with a lot for economic opportunities. A lot, and then also it's not just the cost anymore; it's reliability. Virginia imports 35% of all of its power, and it's not just Virginia, but we have been transitioning since 2020 away from coal. The Virginia Clean Economy Act is forcing us to transition away from natural gas now by law. That 55% of power in the Commonwealth of Virginia I mentioned has to be eliminated by 2045 in the Dominion area territory. So Southeast Virginia or Eastern Virginia, and then by 2050 in the western part of Virginia. So how are we going to replace 55% of all of our power with solar and wind? And because of that, PJM has come out and said that the states that are importing power are not going to be able to import as much as they've been importing in the past. And they're they're calling that it will be a risk of rolling blackouts in 4 to 7 years from now because of this, because states have gotten rid of what we call baseload power that comes on when you need it, right? Natural gas, coal, nuclear, those are your baseload power. It doesn't matter if the wind's blowing or the sun's shining. And we've retired plants, and other states have as well, and they brought on intermittent power, which although does give off electrons, it is not as reliable because it's, the wind's got to blow, the sun's got to shine, that sort of thing, and it's causing some reliability issues inside of our grid.
To follow up on that, I mean, I think probably all of us know this, but for somebody who isn't living power day and night, what is the importance of balancing electrons and reliability? I mean, how long, if I turned on my lights when I walked into my office, when were the electrons that are powering those lights produced?
So, it's interesting. So when you look at the power, and we have a great grid, but it shows, the power generation of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And it very much follows the natural transitions of the sun, right? Because we have so much solar in Virginia. But at the very end, the what we call peak demand is 4 to 8 p.m. pretty much on the day. So it's as the sun's going down that demand goes up the highest. And that's because people are coming home, they're washing their dishwasher, they're charging their car, they're washing clothes, they're turning on the lights, they're watching TV, they're on their computer. All that stuff has now thrown it through the roof, which is why, when we talk about where we need electrons and what time frames we need them added to the grid, it's that 4 to 8 p.m. And when you talk about electricity costs going up and do we need to build more power, it's because power, you don't build based on how much power you use over the course of the year. You build on how much power you need at any one point in time. And that point in time happens to be the coldest of cold days, hottest of hot days between 4 and 8 p.m.
Why don't you just produce more power on a kind of balmy day and save it? I mean, if I'm going to produce Coca-Cola, I can put it in my warehouse. Why don't I produce on a nice day and save it for a cold day?
And that's where we look at innovation is going to come and truly disrupt some things and add that. So that's where energy storage comes into play. And there's so many different types of energy storage. You've got hydrogen. Most people talk about battery storage, right? Which is what we all talk about. But you've got hydrogen as an entity, as a way we can store energy. You've got some gravity type scenarios where we can store energy. But that is
storage.
Yeah, pump storage, yep. So it's great to be able to have that, and that's coming a long way. And as we get longer term battery storage or energy storage, that's going to allow us to basically shift that peak curve because we'll be able to provide that power when we need it. And that power could come from natural gas or it could come from the sun. So that's really going to help quite a bit.
Thank you.
Yeah, we don't have the technology to store in commercial quantities.
Yeah, not in the ways we did them now. I mean, we have 4-hour batteries that are out there commercially, and that's fine, right? But if you're talking about something where it's truly going to help us push the curve, so I look at Vermont. Vermont had a great model, and I wanted to do it in Virginia, but our utilities, the population is like in Dominion territory is more. There's a lot more population in an area. But Vermont said instead of us going out and building more power generation resources, it is cheaper to send all the residents a 4-hour battery in this utilities area and let the utilities control them. And that's what they did. So instead of building new power generation, they just sent everyone installed a 4-hour battery that the utility controls. So in peak hours, it actually uses those batteries to decrease the energy demand on the grid to prevent them from having to build more power generation. And so we talk about things like microgrids, which are kind of very similar scenarios on a bigger, larger scale that will also help things like that as well.
Thank you. All right, let me take it back to you, Director Davis. Talk to us a little bit about the role of the Department of Energy, the role of the director of the department, and then what does Virginia Energy do or not do within this picture?
The department is basically crafts the energy policy for the administration. We oversee the energy plan for the Commonwealth of Virginia. And its implementation. We draft, in conjunction with a couple of our agencies, the energy security plan, which is different from the energy plan. The energy security plan is what happens, a national with a significant disaster situation. Can our hospitals still stay online? Can our public safety still stay online? Are we properly protected from cybersecurity threats? That sort of thing. We oversee the permitting of the mines out in Southwest Virginia. We oversee safety of the mines. We have safety teams. We also oversee the mapping and hopefully identification of critical minerals around the Commonwealth of Virginia that commercial entities may want to come in mine. And then we also are the experts for the Commonwealth when it comes to energy technology and helping to give guidance, advice on policies or directions. Whether it's, I have a number of PhDs in my office. I have experts on everything from nuclear to wind to gas to solar that we're able to help provide the legislature and the administration guidance and expertise on those. And then lastly, I would say, David, our job is also to go help spread Virginia's message that we are a leader in energy and bring a lot of interest, hopefully economic interest, into the Commonwealth. My job as the director, I'm a gubernatorial appointee, so I serve at the pleasure of the governor. And my job is to oversee the department. I have an amazing team. So when I came in, as you'd imagine, David, I had a large learning curve. Jumped on really quick. An amazing team helped with that. But my job is to kind of jump into the middle of it, make sure that we have a tremendous efficiency, expertise, good teams to do the job that we're supposed to do. And then I do get involved, just because of my background, David, in a lot of economic development opportunities. I get into the weeds of certain types of energy development, mainly nuclear at this point, and trying to bring that first of a kind to the Commonwealth. And then, David, I'm sorry, you had a third part in there, and I forgot what that part was.
What is it that Virginia Energy is not doing and could do?
So we actually do not regulate energy. So So FERC. So you've got, if it's nuclear, it's the federal level, right? You've got the NRC up there. When it comes to gas, and you're taking gas across lines, you've got FERC. When it comes to environmental scenarios, we have the Department of Environmental Quality in Virginia that oversees that. So we actually don't oversee the actual development and permitting of energy in the Commonwealth.
Thank you for that explanation. I will take issue with one thing you said, which is that you had a huge learning curve. You, my friends, are one of the smartest people I know, with an incredible background of entrepreneurship and local government, and then state government and economic development. So I do not anticipate that was a huge learning curve. That said, I am going to turn it, and there was a discussion about FERC there. Michael, you're one of the foremost experts on FERC in the country. Let's turn it over to you to talk a little bit about, in the next segment, of what's ahead, the pressure gaps, the trade-offs. So, Michael.
Thank you. So I guess first question, what do you see as the top energy-related challenge Virginia will face in the next 5 to 10 years?
I would say there's two. There's those at the state level, internal to the state, and then there's the external challenges. And I'd like to handle them in reverse for a second. So PJM, Virginia does not exist in a vacuum. The PJM is that entity that's meant to, its mission when it was set up was to basically balance electrons on the grid, keep the lights on. They need to be so much more than that today. They need to be an entity that is the expert to guide states in reliable power choices. So basically, the whole grid of PJM stays reliable. Unfortunately, the states do not have a say in PJM. You've probably seen recently, the governors got together, including my governor and the governor of Pennsylvania and others, and wrote a letter requesting, I would say they were meant to read between the lines. It was much more than an ask, that we be able to put two members, bipartisan members, on the board of PJM, on the managing board of PJM, two very highly respected individuals, both prior FERC commissioners, one the past chairman of FERC. PJM turn them down. The PJM states got together and held our own PJM technical conference where we had over 400 people in attendance in Philadelphia, with another large number online. And we have not stopped going to PJM. And if it requires us to file with FERC directly to get our voices heard formally at PJM, we will do so. But PJM is not going to solve the problems we're facing with grid reliability and affordability without the states at the table. Mark Christie had it right when he was chairman of FERC and said PJM does not have an economics problem. It has a political problem. And we're partners. And I will tell you, people ask me all the time, what's the biggest challenge to affordable and reliable grids in PJM? And I tell them the biggest one is state legislatures. And David knows exactly what I'm talking about. When you get legislators that they mean well and they're trying to solve problems, but they don't do this 24/7. And sometimes you have policies that come out that impact the whole reliability of the regional grid.
140 of your former colleagues are not going to be happy with you right now.
Yeah, well, and behind closed doors, about half of them, David, realized they made a mistake. They just won't say it publicly. You've heard the speaker come out recently and say, we have to change the Virginia Clean Economy Act. It was not built for the energy demand that we have today. It was built for a time when we expected energy demand to be 1% to 2% year-over-year growth, not 6.5% year-over-year growth. And that leads me into the first part I mentioned, Michael, which was the internal threat. In Virginia, the Virginia Clean Economy Act was passed in 2020. And whether it was good or bad, the times were different. We did anticipate, and I say we, it was us, it was Dominion, it was PJM. Everyone only anticipated 1% to 2% year-over-year growth. Now we're anticipating 6.5% year-over-year growth, the highest in the nation. The Virginia Clean Economy Act will send blackouts through the Commonwealth of Virginia. It just is what it is. We cannot get rid of 55% of our power, which is all baseload, on whenever you need it, and replace it with solar and wind that is intermittent, and you can roll a die and figure out whether it's going to be there or not. There is a time when that renewable power technology will continue to increase. We'll be able to use it more and more, but it is a full path to go down that path right now because it's already costing us loss of economic opportunities. Because businesses, when they come to Virginia, they don't come for a 4-year business plan. They come for a 40, 50-year business plan. And they're looking at a state that by law has to get rid of 55% of all of its power in 2045. And the question is, will they sit in Virginia and play Russian roulette and see whether the Democrats are going to bluff or not in 2040? Or do they just go to a state like Pennsylvania, Democrat state, that doesn't do that, that recognizes that natural gas is necessary and has not put that mandate on top of itself? So that's the challenge to the next administration, Michael, that I think they're going to have to deal with. The incoming governor has said she's all of the above. I hope she is, including new and existing natural gas. The Speaker of the House is a good friend of mine. I know that he very much is committed to making sure the lights stay on. He has said things about having to fix the Virginia Clean Economy Act, so that's going to be the biggest challenge.
And let me interject here for a second for the benefit of the listeners. The two that Director Davis just mentioned, the incoming governor and the Speaker of the House, are both Democrats. And Glenn, I was planning to talk about this in the next section, and I will, but keep this in mind, in the back of your mind. I'll leave it with Michael for a minute, and we'll talk about it in the next section. This used to be a clear cut, when you and I were in the House, it used to be a clear cut Democrat versus Republican issue. It used to be that you are either with Dominion or not with Dominion. Then, Clean Virginia came on board, and I don't want to turn this into a political episode. We're not doing that today. Yeah. But it's no longer really just a partisan issue. We've seen in Virginia and in this particular election, people from both sides of the aisle on one side of this debate and people from both sides of the aisle on the other side of this debate. So just keep that. We'll talk a little bit about that in the next segment. I just wanted to clarify to the listener. Sorry, Michael, the microphone is yours.
I think that's helpful. So I guess one question I would have is on, and this is more on the first part, the external on PJM, but how much do you think local opposition is hurting, delaying interconnects that then translate into increased costs for people in Virginia, part one of the question, and what can be done to try to address local concerns, but also not in a way that it just undermines interconnects.
Yeah, Michael, I mean, that is a great question. I mean, to the first question, yes. I mean, the local opposition to some new energy power generation facilities has tremendous impact and has slowed things down. I'll bring up the Chesterfield plant. That is so interestingly, that is one of the RRI areas, basically one of the areas that FERC basically allowed to be fast tracked. It has significant. So I used to be in local government for 5 years before the House. And I will tell you that in local government, I served in an area that there were 450,000 people in my city. And if 50 people showed up in city council chambers, you would have thought some people thought the world was coming to an end, right? And so it's hard to keep in mind that you do have a large vocal minority, or I guess there's kind of an oxymoron there, but a loud vocal minority is probably a better way to put it. And it does slow things down, but that's where the government, the utilities have to come in and help with education on the importance of things like this, and because ultimately we either need more dispatchable power like natural gas, or we do risk rolling blackouts. And I talk a lot, Michael, about keeping the lights on, but this isn't keeping the lights on. We remember the winter Texas storm. People didn't lose lights. They lost lives, right? When we talk about a rolling blackout, it's not on the nice day, cool day that maybe we're feeling today in Richmond. It's the coldest of cold days, the hottest of hot days, when your parents or your grandparents' heat or AC goes off with their lights and risk their lives. That's what we need to protect against. That's the experience they had in Texas, and that's why it's so important for us to get this energy mix right here. But to your point, yes, local opposition does delay things, and I think it is incumbent upon the utilities, the government to get out and kind of work with everyone to create win-win solutions, and honestly, in a lot of cases, provide education.
So let's talk about the grid, capacity, reliance, reliability. What keeps you up at night?
Grid going off. I mean, I have one job in the Commonwealth. I have a lot of jobs, but the one that I take most responsibility for and is pulls at me the most is that I make sure that I do as much as I can to provide us to a pathway of reliable and affordable power. And not just to the end of the term. My job ends in 60 days, right? But put us on the glide path so in 4 to 7 years that we don't have lights going off. I mean, it's, someone loses their lights for 2 hours. It's inconvenient. Who cares? But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Texas. We're talking about loss of lives. And I feel that I sit at a point where I have significant influence to help guide policy that gives us that reliable grid so that does not happen to Virginia. So that, and it's not hyperbole. If we don't get this right, we do run the risk of rolling blackouts. And in many cases, like I said before, Michael, it's not just because of decisions made in Virginia, but it's also decisions made in other states in the PJM grid.
Before we shift to the next segment, let's maybe end on a little more hopeful note. Two game-changing things that I've thought of and would like your reaction. So one is fusion. That there's a demonstration plant that's going to be coming online in a couple of years that may be commercial level fusion. And then we kind of touched on this already, but better battery power, the ability to store, charge your car in an hour and go 1,000 miles. So what's your thought on those two issues? So
fusion, I'm a little bit of a nerd, when it comes to some of this stuff, Michael. Fusion, we all heard when we were in high school, it was the holy grail of energy. It was unlimited. It was clean. It was the end all be all of energy power, right? It was always 15 years away. Every 15 years was 15 years away. And actually it's not a demonstration unit in Virginia. The demonstration unit for Commonwealth Fusion System, CFS, is in Massachusetts. It's the spark reactor up there CFS was spun out of MIT. I went up there and visited with them. They've raised billions and billions of dollars on this now. Some of the largest investors in the world are behind them, Bill Gates, Google, and a lot of others. And they made the decision that the first commercial fusion reactor in the world will be in Chesterfield, Virginia, and they start construction in 2026. I'm not a scientist. I can probably name 10 materials on the atomic table right now, periodic table right now. But there are a lot of smarter people than I that have put billions of dollars behind this, thinking this is it and that it will be there. So I'm very hopeful. I'm very excited about it. And the fact that it's in Virginia, we've already seen international news was announced, and we've already talked about there will be heads of state and dignitaries coming to Virginia as this starts construction and comes online, which will be very, very exciting for the Commonwealth. And when people read their history books about where was the Model T first built and all that stuff, and now in history books and science books, they'll be reading about Virginia being the first place that nuclear fusion happened at a commercial level.
I totally agree on the fusion has been, the energy of the future for 15 years, for the past 70 years. But what I'm reminded of in my oil background, my father was a chemist for Shell his whole life. And I remember in the 80s, he was talking about shale oil. And he said, if we can ever figure out how to get that out, we've got more oil than Saudi Arabia. But it was always, shale oil was 10 to 15 years away until it wasn't.
And that's it. And that's, we all knew it was going to happen one day, Michael. It's just whether or not it was going to happen during our lifetimes, and was it early in our lifetimes or later in our lifetimes? And this very much could be the period that we see nuclear fusion, and it will be a game changer.
And then how about commercial level storage? What's your thought on that?
So commercial level storage, I think, will be more of a disruptor in the power space than anything else can be. So because its ability to store power to times that you need it. So we can talk about commercial energy storage where we can say what we talked about before, Michael, where you could actually harness the sun's energy, use it to power whatever right now, and then save it till you need between 4 and 8 p.m. But let's take this a step further. Right now, anyone that has solar panels on their home, those solar panels don't power their house. The power goes on the grid. In Virginia, the utility pays the people that have the solar panels the retail cost of electricity for doing that. They're putting power on the grid when the utility doesn't need it. All the other ratepayers are subsidizing them for doing so. It makes no economic or reliable sense in the world. It sounded really good to a whole bunch of elected officials and some special interest groups. Where this is a game changer is when you're able to put 4, 8, 12-hour batteries in someone's home, and they can have solar power that powers their house during the day, that also powers and charges up that 4, 8, 12-hour battery, that battery draws down overnight and does it again. Now you've got a self-maintaining power supply, whether it's your home or your business, which totally disrupts the whole utility scenario. Not that we're going to ever come completely off a grid, because you still need that emergency backup, and what happens if it rains for 5 days, but how much less power do we truly need when solar efficiency goes beyond the 20% or so we're at today? And I know a lot of scientists say it can't go there, but if we remember, there was a time when computer chips they thought were maxed out at the 46 DXs that we had when I was at working at Circuit City, which isn't even around anymore. So as you see more efficient solar and you see more efficient battery power, now you're self-contained in your homes, in your business. The whole landscape changes. So I think commercial and residential battery storage in 15 years is more of a disruption than anything else we'll see.
Even bigger than fusion?
Even bigger than fusion. Fusion is going to be the end-all be-all of sending clean energy to the grid. But can you imagine if you have homes that you don't need to be on the grid, or you're using grid power very rarely because you've got enough battery for a full day, So as long as the sun comes out, one of those 2 days, I mean, you may cut your energy demand, by a third, maybe by a half. It just really starts to disrupt things. And we're already talking about power behind the meter. Small modular reactors. This administration laid the line down of the moonshot. We're going to be one of the first states with a small modular nuclear reactor. And we're not only talking about those nuclear reactors to power the grid, we're talking about them behind the meter. So a large manufacturing facility or a large data center would not have to pull all their power from the grid. They'll have a nuclear reactor on the same property or an adjacent property, providing them reliability of power without using the existing distribution and transmission infrastructure, which in our state and many states is not where it needs to be, honestly, for what we're going to expect in the future. So I'm really excited about the innovation coming around. I'm very excited about fusion, but I don't think that's just another power supply to the grid, right? Amazing innovation. We're all excited, but it's just another source of power. When you can actually do it on site, that's a game changer.
Thank you. Let me follow up on that before I move to the final segment and talk a little bit about energy policy beyond politics. But follow up on that for a second. That fusion production that's going to start in 2026. When the plant is going to start 2026, right?
The construction.
So when will it produce?
Electrons will start flowing, they expect, in early 2030s.
So
32, 33. Yeah, 32, 33, something like that.
It takes that long.
To build the plant, yes.
To build the plant. And
yeah,
then,
if your listeners go online, David, and they look up CFS, and they'll see this magnet. I mean, it's the world's largest magnet. It's phenomenal, but yes, it's going to take quite a while.
And how much is it expected to produce?
So that plant, oh my God. I have so many numbers in my head. I know Google has done a PPA to take 400 megawatts of it. I want to say it's a gig plant, David, and they're going to shoot me if I got that wrong, but I don't want to be misquoted on that, but I think it's a gig plant, and 400 megawatts is good, or maybe it's a 400 megawatt plant. That Google's taken all of it, but it's somewhere around there, David.
So we're still going to be short as a state.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
Okay.
we're excited about the technology, but it doesn't solve all of our energy needs.
Got it. And that's what I want.
Megawatts is a really serious amount of power for one plant.
Oh, yeah. But keep in mind, the SMRs that we're talking about now, Michael, well, I mean, everyone talking about an SMR it's all about a gig, right? The AP1000 Westinghouse is a gig. And these SMRs are being built NuScale is building 77 megawatt units, and they're doing 12 packs for 1.x gig. But the other ones are building 300 megawatt units, and they're selling them in 4 packs. So everything now is being sold as a gig because, data centers today, if you can't start talking at 300 megawatts, they don't talk to you, and they all want to be able to expand to a gig.
Interesting. All right, one more thing on the innovation part before I move to the next section. The nuclear microreactors.
Yes.
These 5 megawatt small on-site nuclear reactors that I believe the Army is working on them or using them already. And as it's my understanding, there's a program called Janus, whereby the now Department of War is asking for states to start procuring these. Talk to me about these nuclear microreactors.
They may not be micros. They actually may be small at the end of the day.
Okay.
So they are talking with some micros. And I mean, micro gets defined. So typically, I've heard it defined up to 50 megawatts. I mean, a lot of times they talk about 5 and 10. I've heard it defined up to 50. But the administration has come down and said they'd like to have their bases, and the Navy's gone down with their own RFPs and RFIs. They like the base to be able to operate as an island, as we understand, right? God forbid something happened, the bases still need to stay powered. But how do you, when you talk about it's $10 to $15 billion for a gig site, how do you fund that? And what the administration has talked about is, well, why don't we put compute data centers there too? And these hyperscale data centers are able to pay some of the upfront capital costs. They're also able to pay power purchase agreements at levels in excess of traditional power costs. So now there's thoughts of, let's build an SMR behind the fence line. Let's have it power the base, and let's also have it power a hyperscale compute data center. And so that's where we're going. About a year ago, David, when this all kind of took off, the Navy put out an RFI looking to get to what top 7 bases in the U.S. should be first to have a small modular reactor there. 4 of the 7 chosen were in Virginia. So Virginia is going to be kind of ground zero for getting this new technology in conjunction with our DoD facilities.
But outside of DoD and bases, I live in Loudoun County, as you know. We have the highest number of data centers in the world. Why not put these reactors in areas where now needs power, not planning for the future, and be able to do it on a data center plant for small 5 megawatts or so?
If you're volunteer in your backyard, we're all game. So I don't know if I could imagine going to Loudoun County right now with as upset as they are at data centers, saying, "Oh, we're going to put a nuclear reactor there as well." You may have some upset neighbors, but we are going to be building reactors. There was conversation and an MOU not that long ago, about a year ago, between Amazon AWS and Dominion for their SMR that they're going to put at North Anna. The same thing when it comes to APCO, when they announced Joshua Falls, that it will probably be in conjunction with a data center. Here's why data centers are such an important factor in this new technology. The first of anything always costs more, right? And the first small modular reactor is going to cost significantly more than a traditional power plant, gas or whatever. And it's going to also, it'll come down in cost as the other ones are built. But we don't want to put that burden on our ratepayers, you, me, and everyone else in their homes. So where the first ones are going to happen, David, is they will be powering data centers who have already said they will pay more than the typical cost of electricity, so they can have the reliability of an SMR. For data centers, their impact of cost is not as important to them as would be the UI and most businesses. It's actually the reliability they need. So they're willing to pay more for the price elasticity. That's what I was looking for. Price elasticity is so much different that they're willing to pay more for power to have the reliability. And then as we start seeing these being built, eventually the cost of building them will come down enough that they'll be used to power our homes as well by utilities. But right now, the first few you see coming up, they're going to be used to power data centers.
Interesting. All right. Thank you. Now let's talk a little bit about politics. This energy policy is definitely affected by politics. As I mentioned earlier, and you agreed, it used to be clear-cut Democrats versus Republicans on this. That's no longer the case. There's still some of that, but no longer the case. Especially in Virginia, we saw quite a bit of Republicans and Democrats that are with Dominion, and then we saw Republicans and Democrats that are against Dominion, that are for natural and renewables. We saw just 3 days ago, former Governor McAuliffe joins a pro-natural gas group as national co-chair.
Yep.
I mean, my good friend, Terry McAuliffe,
I know.
who is a colleague here. Your buddy, yeah. Yep, who is a colleague at school, and the first episode of this podcast was with him and Bob McDonnell. And this was the former chair of the DNC, not only the former governor of Virginia. So yep. Talk to me a little bit about what can we do beyond politics here. Take off your Republican hat, and what can we do beyond politics? If you were blindly talking to the next director of energy, not knowing if that person coming in is Democrat or Republican, what would you tell them?
Away from legislators. Don't get caught up in the sound bites. Don't ever say the word Reggie. Get rid of the Virginia. Get rid of everything that was ever done for political purposes, not for the benefit of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and just do what the experts and those in the areas tell you. David, you and I have been around politics for a long time. We know why things happen.
Yep.
When the Virginia Clean Economy Act was done, it was one of the most important bills in the Commonwealth of Virginia. It was written, changed multiple times, and voted on in 60 days with 2,000 other bills. It was never modeled, and it has hamstrung us. Most people don't realize Reggie has cost $800 million to the ratepayer. Every dollar. That's what people don't get. David, if you said, Glenn, I'm going to go on a diet, and I said, David, every piece of cake you eat, the calories are going to go to Michael. How much less cake would you eat, right? And the answer is you'd eat more cake. And that's how Reggie works, right? All the penalties go onto the ratepayers, not to Dominion. And we've even found out that over 2 billion pounds of tons, I think it's pounds actually, of greenhouse gases were emitted because of Reggie, because all that happened was Dominion started using their coal plants in West Virginia more than they use their natural gas plants in Virginia, because it didn't govern that, right? And so I don't say this because it's not political, but this is what happened when legislators who were in a short session, 60 days, try to do the right thing without all the knowledge they need, and lobbyists come out from both directions, and they do what they're being told to do by the base of their party. So what I would tell anyone coming in is to get out of the soundbite and the noise, and go sit down behind closed doors. I mean, hell, the Speaker of the House, sit down with them behind closed doors. He'll have a blunt conversation. Sit down with Bob Blue, the head of Dominion. A blunt conversation. Same thing with AEP APCO. Same thing with have the Dominion is an amazing company. As you know, David, they don't lose, right? I mean, they when it comes to energy policy, they were against the Clean Economy Act before they were for it, right? Because things change, right?
Yep.
I mean, but behind closed doors, they know how to have a reliable grid. And so I would tell you that if it wasn't for politics, a lot of this conversation that we're having at the PJM level in the state of Virginia, we wouldn't be having, because our utilities, they know how to run a grid. They know what they need to build, when they need to build it, how it needs to run, how we can get increasingly clean without risking our lights. Unfortunately, as you and I have always said, David, we're very similar in a lot of ways. Politics gets in the way of good governance sometimes. And so that's what's happening in energy. Energy should not be political. It's been made political by certain special interest groups and bases. But at the end of the day, it shouldn't be. There's a right path to make sure you're affordable, reliable, and increasingly clean, and it's not partisan.
I am an all of the above guy, and I would love to see more renewables, but I still want to drive my F-150, which I do.
Yes.
But I want to follow up on something you said. Trust the experts, right? Well, the experts don't agree. We have colleagues here at George Mason that if I had them with you today on the show, they'd be pulling their hair listening to what you're saying. So which experts, still following up on the original question of your successor, if you were blindly advising, not knowing if that is a Democratic or Republican administration, giving them that advice, how are you going to advise that successor, that next director of energy, to talk to which experts and how can he or she pick the experts that are not partisan or political?
Data in front of them. So, David, when I first came into this job, I had McKinsey. You know McKinsey, right? International company. Yeah. They're not known to be conservative. You and I both know that.
Correct.
But I hired them for a reason. And I didn't say, I want you to model my governor's energy plan. I said, give me a model that adheres to all the Virginia Clean Economy mandates, that shows me that we can do that and keep the lights on. They came up with 6 models. None of them were able to do that. They said, Glenn, it can't be done. That's what I mean, Dave, with the experts. It's not the people that have read the books or written the books. Put the data in front of it. I have challenged everyone I've spoken with, and I've spoken to many people that don't maybe agree like I do, to give me a model that shows that we can keep the lights on while we get rid of 55% of all of our power today by 2045. And no one's been able to do it. And I hired an entity for a ton of money to go show me how to do it, and they couldn't do it. And when I say they built a model, David, they said, Glenn, it takes us over 8 hours to run a model. I'm like, what are you using, Commodore 64s? And they're like, no, Glenn, we have to put all the data into a model, then everything, and then the computers, hour by hour, will make a decision based on all the stuff inside the system and costs and everything that's assumed for 15 years. So it takes a number of computers, 8 hours to do a model. And they did this 6 times for me in the 6 different variations, trying to figure out how we come and we comply. Because all I wanted to know was, how do we comply and what the cost is going to be? And the answer was, we can't meet energy demand regardless of price. And so that's when I say experts, David, I really mean the experts that can come with the data that that you can put down with the other side and say, prove me his data is wrong, because that's what I'm willing to do. I was not ever going to go out in my job and say we can't do something unless I knew darn well and good we couldn't do it. And I've challenged everyone to give me a model, and no one's been able to give me a model. There was an entity that has put together something that said we can do this. We need 700 megawatts a month of new solar for X number of years. And I said, well, that's great, but right now you have what percent? A number of localities are willing to do more solar. There's and some of them are obviously passed ordinances against a certain amount of solar in their areas. I said, you got all this stuff against solar. What happens if you can't do it? Well, the model shows this: if you do this, this will happen. I'm like, yeah, but I don't care if you can. If reality says you're never going to be able to do this in the real world, and that's the issue, right? So that's what I mean by I know there's people on both sides, David, and I think both sides have their theory. I've always believed the truth is in the middle, but the people that I trust are the ones that can come up with experts, and then I bring in people that I trust on the other side, and I say, tell me where they're wrong. And if they can't tell me, then that person's right. But if you can't have the conversation, you're not willing to have the debate, then clearly it's hyperbole.
I can spend another hour talking to you about this stuff, but we are running out of time. Dr. Webb, do you have a final quick question? I know we have several prepared that we could have asked, but final quick question for the director.
I think what would you see as some nonpartisan pro-business steps Virginia could take right now to modernize infrastructure and improve energy efficiency?
These reactors are bipartisan. The bills that allowed the utilities to get advanced recovery on siting costs, one was carried by a Democrat, one was carried by a Republican. Both of them came out very supported in the House and the Senate in a bipartisan manner. Fusion, very much a bipartisan scenario, came flying out of the House and the Senate, bipartisan manner. Upgrades to our transmission infrastructure, what we call GETs. Reconductoring transmission lines so that our existing infrastructure can handle more going across the lines than it does today without having to go rebuild everything. Very much a bipartisan scenario. Truly, and I don't want people to think that energy has gotten to be partisan, because it really isn't. The majority of the stuff that we need to do is bipartisan and will get tremendous support. But the policies sometimes that impact what you're able to use and not able to use, that's where the partisanship comes in that causes some issues. But that's a very small piece compared to all the stuff we have to do, which is infrastructure build. And a lot of that infrastructure is transmission and distribution infrastructure. Now, I say that talking about David's good friend, Michael Webb, who has been known to put in these, you can't build new transmission lines unless you underground them, which I can completely understand and talk here and loud in those areas, but the cost of that is so much more expensive. So you have those, but that's not partisan. It's a bipartisan conversation of what the cost should be of these infrastructure upgrades in these areas where they go across localities that have a certain community feel to them, right? But at a 30,000-foot view, there's so much going on. It's bipartisan. We're moving things forward. It's just we just have to do more of it, and definitely support innovation, because the only way we're going to get ourselves out of this is by innovating ourselves out of it.
And I'll give a shout out to my former seatmate in the Virginia House and dear friend who admittedly is not happy with my politics nowadays, but I don't hold it against him, Michael Webb, and also a George Mason alum, fellow patriots. So Michael, if you're listening, regards to you. All right, final question, Director Davis. What should our students be doing at George Mason? How can universities be helpful in this discussion?
So I love Mason. I attended Mason. I was very proud to fund the E2 Center, the largest SMR nuclear control room simulator in the world is at George Mason University at the Fusion Center, aptly named. And so I would say, I don't want people to go change their majors if they're already seniors, David. However, anyone that wants an amazing career that is never going to be boring, that has tremendous legs, that you're just in the infancy of, get involved in the energy sector. Whether it's regulatory, whether it's engineering, whether it's some of the newer technologies coming out, because there's so much there. On a personal scenario, just, we control how much power we all use. I love smart devices, and I have a ton of them. So that's never going to go away. But some of the smart devices can control what time of day my dishwasher comes on and my washing machine comes on, right? AI, is ChatGPT. It's such in its infancy. It's going to grow dramatically in adoption rates. So that's going to continue to be used. So we just have to be more efficient in our households to kind of move the grid demand. But honestly, I would tell them to take an interest in it, get involved in it. It's going to be very exciting as we continue moving forward.
Energy is going to be very exciting. That's the tagline. Any final thoughts, gentlemen?
I appreciate the time, David. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Glenn, thank you for joining us and for the work you're doing to keep Virginia's energy future secure, affordable, and forward-looking. And best of luck in the new endeavor. I know you have 60 more days of public service, at least for this time. I know your public service is not ending in the future. Michael, always a pleasure having your voice and insights in the mix. Listeners, you can catch all of our episodes at char.gmu.edu/podcast or wherever you get your podcasts. This has been Policy and Governance Perspectives. I am Dr. David Ramadan. Until next time, stay informed and stay energized.
That brings us to the end of another insightful episode of Policy and Governance Perspectives. We truly appreciate you joining us for these important discussions featuring voices from across the Schar School. For more information and to explore our archive of past episodes, please visit char.gmu.edu/podcast. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to sharing more with you next time.